this meeting. With me are board members Robin Wilkinson, Martin Zaber, David Little, Austin Higgins, and Sibel Asantagru. We have one item of business before us this evening. It's a continuation of, I have it here, case number 2026-06, Preservation of Affordable Housing, Housing Corporation, Housing Assistance Corporation, and Habitat for Humanity, Cape Cod, have applied for a comprehensive permit as set forth in Mass General Laws, Chapters 40B, Sections 20 through 23. The applicants are seeking approval to construct and operate 78 units of affordable and moderate income rental and home ownership housing in multiple phases. The property is located at 66 and 76 Route 6A and is located in the VC Village Center zoning district. Before we have testimony tonight, I need to reauthorize the board. And it was due each meeting, and I'd ask each board member if there's any change of circumstance or any activity that would preclude you from considering the matter before you impartially and fairly. No one answering, I would then qualify each member of the board to serve for this hearing this evening. We have since the last meeting, we have received a nice comprehensive summary by David Quinn of 6 pages, and we've seen new materials from the architectural team, the development team. And so I think what the order tonight should be is to hear from the applicant, to make his presentation, and have the board hold off on questions until, ask questions during the presentation, but hold off on any questions that haven't been answered by David's memorandum till after the presentation, at which point we'd have more questions by the board, followed by input from the members at large, if that's suitable to everyone. Does that make sense, Mr. Fisher? Yeah. Very good. Applicant, please.
Thank you again. For the record, Peter Freeman, attorney representing the applicants. I'm going to turn it right over to Paul Adaman. Just wanted to quickly give you our overview of what we think we will go through, what we will go through. First, the architectural presentation with the update on architectural design elements, materials. Then you had also asked about landscaping, so we have Joe. I think he's remote, but he'll go through more landscaping plan details. Thirdly, traffic. It really hadn't been discussed much, but we had prepared a traffic report. And so we have, again, I think remotely, our traffic engineer to just give an overview of, his report. And then finally, discussion briefly of the question of the site management. I submitted a memo, and I apologize, a couple of things were last minute, so I know you probably hadn't been able to read it, but there were some questions about how the management of the overall site would take place. So I did a summary that I submitted, and I submitted copies of sample documents from homeowner association documents for the Habitat single-family homes that they've used in the past. So that's basically our outline, and without further ado, unless you have questions already, turn it over to Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Good evening, everyone. Paul Atman with Union Studio Architecture and Community Design for the record. Nice to be back here, even though it's a little rainy. We are returning to you today with some revisions to the architecture and some updates for some information that you requested the last time we were here a month ago. So I'll dive right into it this is just for reference. This is our proposed site plan that hasn't changed. This here is the architecture for Building 1. The lower elevation is what we previously proposed, and there was some comments about materiality. There was a question about whether or not that cupola and that center ridge line between the two middle gables is really needed at that point of the building, because people felt like it overpowered the building a little bit too much. And I think Mr. Higgins had a question about, well, what if that goes away? And so we looked at that, and we were able to bring that center ridge line down a little bit, just enough so that it does cover the elevator override. That's the center of the building. And then instead, we actually proposed 2 cupolas, one on either wing. So it actually we like this design because it looks like it's two buildings that are set next to each other and shifted in plan. And that shift happens right at that front entrance area right here that is double columns on either corner and on the facade of the overhang. So other little changes is, which you might not see here on the screen, but in your packet, is just that these stair entrances are shed roofs that are in keeping with the standing seam roof on the lower projections of this double bay, as well as the taller bay that's a two-story bay. So it's a little bit more in keeping and cohesive. The next change, going to the back, is at that shift, instead of an entrance, one-story entrance, it's a two-story balcony at the ground floor entrance, right at the center of the building. And that second floor balcony provides a little outdoor space for residents to gather and sit outside and look out over the bike path. So this gives a little bit more relief along that elevation that we think is, and also a nice amenity for the residents. And you can see that the ridge line here too is brought down, and the two cupolas on either, let's say, wing of the building. What is right below each cupola is the mechanical unit, the platform that's carved into the roof. So it's not projecting or applied onto the roof, but it's carved into the volume of the roof to make it less visible. In terms of materials, this here is a sampling of what we are proposing, starting with the key point number one. It's typical asphalt shingle roofing throughout on the main roof. Number two, I have it here, is the standing seam metal roof, as I mentioned before, on the lower porch roofs and the projection bays. Number three is the composite shingle siding. This could be cementitious or an LP Smart side, but that is the accent siding at the top of the gables, as well as the dormers, the perceived dormers on either end of the building, as well as the building number two, which you can see on the right-hand side. It shares some of the same materials as building one. Number four is the composite horizontal lap siding, and that would be the primary siding on the main walls that we're proposing for about a 5-inch exposure. That is typical per manufacturer's recommendations. It'll be a smooth finish too. It will not be the imprinted faux wood grain that is popular in some areas of the region, I would say northeast region. Number five is casement windows, and the reason, and this is illustrated right here with the divided light pattern, and the reason we are proposing those is because these buildings will be designed to passive house standards. So that is a much more efficient and a better ceiling window than your traditional double hung that you may be expected to see in a lot of the buildings in the area. And then finally, the packed out bay details. This is an example of a project we did in Rhode Island where that detail was utilized to project using 2x4s and flat panel sheathing to get that windows off the main wall to give it a shadow line. And then here's a larger one, also in Rhode Island, on a senior affordable housing development that was just completed. And then to give you an idea of some of the running trim and the column details that we are envisioning for those porches. We also provided some details because we know there's an architect on the board and a few other design-minded people. So this is how we would construct these packed out bays. And then this here on the right is a typical window detail showing the 5/4 casing around each window and the sill.
What are the materials for the trim?
It would,
You didn't mention trim. I'm taking it it's not pine.
no, it will not be pine. Yeah, it will, we like to specify a poly ash siding. It's called true exterior trim. It's a composite material, but it's very stable, cuts like wood, it's soft, and it takes paint really well. So that's our primary choice.
Thank you.
This site plan you've seen is just imposing the proposed development over what is going to be demolished, the various buildings on the site. These images haven't changed from our last hearing. These are views from the bike path, vantages from within the site, looking at building number 1, and then an aerial looking out over the bike path and on toward the back side of building number 1, what you would see if you're a bird or a drone. And then there was a request for some additional information regarding how this development measures up to the recently adopted downtown housing overlay district. So this map here, as you might be familiar with, shows that housing overlay district, but it also has 2 other sub-districts. One being the village scale corridor sub-district, and the other one being the commercial center sub-district. And both of those districts bisect the site. On the right-hand side, the first 100 feet in is that village corridor sub-district, and the remainder of the site is the commercial center sub-district. I'd like to point out that there is one little bit of a green line here at these 2 arterial intersections, and that is the active ground floor use zone. That does not extend its way up to our site, so that does not apply. And so here is, we've kind of broken it into each of the buildings because one of the buildings bisects 2 sites, 2 sub-districts. Building 1 we'll start with, that is in the commercial center sub-district. And we're just showing what is outlined as a requirement or guideline, what we're proposing in this column here, and whether or not that is compliant with that new overlay requirement. And you can see for the most part, we are in compliance. There's some things that we aren't. For instance, building 1, the maximum building footprint is 8,000 square feet. We're proposing 16,344. So, and then there's a little bit of a waiver, or I should say a non-compliance with some facade articulation, meaning the length of the building versus the required bump in of 5 feet at the front of the building. We're proposing 3 foot 6 inches on the front, and on the rear, the projection or the bumps are 2 feet. Moving to building 2, which is straddling that commercial center sub-district, we did analysis of that as it relates to its positioning on the site. And there's, again, some non-compliance and just a little bit larger building footprint, the projection, facade articulation, and then some percentages of facade build-out along the primary front lot line and then the secondary front lot line. And again, this is just for your reference. I think Peter will talk about what waivers we're really asking, which is the underlying zoning district. So this is just for reference. And then building 2, as it straddles into the village scale corridor, here it's a little bit, there's some more criteria because I think the goal there is for it to be more active in a different scale along that frontage. And then buildings 3 and 4 are the 2 townhouse buildings, and those, for the most part, as you can see on the right, either are compliant or that is not applicable for that particular provision. So I could field some questions now before I hand it over to I think it's Joe with
Just
Tide
have
Pond.
one
Yes.
question regarding the, you bring up the building one, the first building one slide,
Elevation?
elevation,
Yep.
please. So where you created the, you have this line and that line coming down, is that just the architectural soffit and eave itself? Or
Ye-
is this actually set back in from the wall to give, so you just don't have the appearance of a rake board coming down the side of a building?
Right, it is a rake board applied onto, let's say, the box or the wall behind it.
So the wall is continuous all
Yes,
the way through?
that's
So, so that's why you're using the differentiation and with the shingles and the clapboard to try and make that distinction?
That's right. Yeah.
Personally, it'd be nice if there actually was a 1 foot setback or something like that. The look of a rake board down the side of a building to kind of create that illusion doesn't really do it for me, but I understand what you're doing.
We'll take note of it and see if we can, as we get into design development and more technical, more advanced the design, we'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
Yep, welcome.
Two questions. Could you bring back the bike trail view, please?
Sure. Oh, there we go.
Thank you. I would note that the bike trail is used year-round, but of course, the greenery, leaves are really only there from April to the end of October, so, and I would further note this building is only 20 feet back from the property line. Generally, in my experience with building, when you build within 20 feet of the property line, to put a foundation and whatnot, you have to clear beyond the 20 feet typically. And I would further note that you're only 56 to 57 feet from the actual paving. I use the bike trail a lot, and a lot of other people do. And I think that this building is terribly close, so I would urge the voting members to maybe ask that that building be moved closer, a little closer to 6A, so that it won't be so towering over the rail trail. And of course, there are a series of condominiums across there that I think are going to be looking in at this building. Perhaps more importantly, and I'm not sure anybody can answer this, but when we bought the property, which I certainly voted for, my feeling was that the housing would be for, if we did housing, that it would be for Orleans residents, and I think probably most of the voters felt that way. I noticed in the information that David gave us that of the 147 units that were built, I guess in the last year or so, that there were 2,417 applicants, which is certainly impressive. But only 59% of those folks actually lived in Barnstable County, implying that 41% of the applicants were from off Cape. So that leads me to this question, and I really think it's important for the board to get an answer to this. And I think we can go back and look at 107 Main Street and the Penrose project. I would like to know how many of the applicants lived or worked or grew up in Orleans. I really think we need to know that before we can vote on a project that's this large. We really need to know. And it may be well beyond what I might imagine it to be, but I really think this board needs to know, based on previous applications, how many people from Orleans that live, work, or grew up in Orleans applied for 107 Main Street and Penrose. So I just think that's really important information. It's important, too, I think, to note that a project isn't just the project. When you add approximately what is it, 78 residences, and some very substantial buildings, we're gonna need more staff, the police, to have fire and so on and so forth. So the residents are stuck picking up the tab, which is fine. I'm a resident, I pay a lot of taxes, and I'll gladly pay it to provide housing for Orleans folks, but you haven't given us that information. I think it's only fair that we get it.
So I'll present Joe, who's a landscape architect, and he'll go through the landscape plan next.
So we'll hold that question for later.
Yeah.
Or a response from later. Thank you.
Good evening.
Joe's online.
I'm online. My name is Joe Ficacello. I'm a senior landscape architect at Halverson Time and Bond, and I am the landscape architect consultant for the project. And I am going to share my screen. Hopefully, I will share the correct one in first pass. So I'm going to go over landscape elements some questions came up, and so essentially I'm going to go over some clarifications on articulating planting, play area, common green and the entry court and hillside green tonight. And just to refresh everybody's memory, hillside green, and we have our play area sort of at the top of that slope. We have our common green, which is the core space within the community, and then our entry court along 6A. So starting with planting clarifications, this sheet here was part of our submission back in February for permitting site plan review. And on that, we had our representative plan schedule, which is enlarged here in the center and the left here. And the schedule on the left is our hillside green representative plan schedule that articulates trees, shade, and mid-sized trees, our woody perennials, shrubs, ground covers, and ferns, and we also have some sizing associated with that. And then for the rest of the site, we've separated that out because it's kind of a special, kind of different zone than that hillside green and the requirements over there, though very similar plant types. But again, articulating trees, both shade and mid-size, and then our woody shrubs, perennials, and ground covers, along with sizing here. All of these are native to the Cape. They are straight species, is what we're striving for. Also, once they're established, we'll be tolerant to the conditions of the site there in terms of drought and soils. There was also a question on building 2 and its view from 6A in relation to our entry court. And so this is the plan that was submitted as part of our permit drawings. And so over here on the left is an enlargement of that area. We've got building 2 here, 6A, and then our courtyards, exterior courtyard space here. And then the blue are our shade trees. So we have a nice buffer between our space in building 2 and 6A. And then the green shaded circles here are more kind of that mid-story flowering tree. And you can see that that kind of wraps around this core space here and then also acts as a bit of a buffer between building 2 and 6A. And then this view here is representative of what that would look like. 6A is just off on the left over here. This is our sort of core space here, and then building 2 in the background on the right, and then our townhouses in the center here in the background. And then this sort of represents about, 2 to 5 years after planting and what that will look like post-establishment out there. Some questions were asked on the play area, and in particular, what that would look like. And right now, the thinking is that it would be more sort of nature play, adventure play, where we would use salvage materials such as larger kind of logs, stacked for climbing. Maybe they get hollowed out, so kids can kind of crawl through them and create little play spaces within them. And also, we like the idea of how sculptural they could be at the top of the slope that leads down to that rail trail in the back there. There's also some grade changes just behind along here, and so we're thinking of using that to our advantage with potentially slides sitting right on the surface, or maybe we could place some kind of boulders, climbing boulders in there again, taking advantage of the contouring that we're going to need to do. So that's what this represents here, where there's a slide, little landing pad, and then this is our adventure play kind of stacked logs up here. Moving on to the common green and entry court, there were some clarifications requested in terms of sizing of those. And so starting with the common green, the overall space is about 160 feet long and about 50 feet wide. So that's about 8,000 square feet. And that includes our nice plant buffer at the edges. And the central lawn here is about 30 feet by 80 feet. We also have a little sort of pocket park area, or pocket kind of plaza space, and that's about 25 feet by 25 feet there, and some little kind of nooks in the background amongst the planting over here. And then our entry court, the actual kind of node or paved area is about 25 feet by 25 feet. And it's surrounded by a nice buffer of planting that we already reviewed in previous slides. And this overall space is approximately 50 feet by 50 feet, which is about 2,500 square feet. And in terms of what that means for the beneficial open space percentage that we need to meet for this site. So we have about 13,000 square feet that includes the play area, which exceeds the 5% minimum for this particular parcel that these kind of fall in. Here's some views looking at the common green and what that will look like. You can see the nice plant buffer at the edges, and managing to still keep kind of a nice open, programmable free space lawn in the middle with some seat areas, paved areas also integrated in there that are pretty nice size, yet intimate for multi-numbered groupings of people. And this is our entry court, and what that view looks like kind of zoomed in here. This is also a nice space for parents and kids to wait for bus, school buses that'll pull up along 6A. Even though it's pretty set back, it is and vegetated around. That canopy's up enough where you do have views out to 6A, and we do provide a path with direct access out to the sidewalk there.
That's a great idea.
The final item is that hillside green. And there were some questions on how we're going to minimize wear pathing. People kind of just meandering down on a straight shot. And so just to orient us, this is our site plan here. There's that hillside green that is enlarged in the center upper image. And so these orange lines represent our wood guardrail and approximately where those will occur. So that, coupled with planting, which these darker shaded areas Those are our woody perennials, woody shrubs, ground covers that will be overlaid on top of. Over here you can see what our contours look like. The blue is the path winding through, and you can see, it is pretty contoured. So between the wood guardrail, planting, and the grading that's required out there, we're kind of using those three elements as strategies to hopefully minimize and make it more difficult for people, or less comfortable for people to just kind of like ramble down on their own and keep them on the path. And that's what I have for landscape.
Any questions? Thank you.
Great.
Oh, how big is the canopy of those trees that you're planting in front of buildings 3 and 4 on Route 6A? Because they look like in 10 years they're going to grow right into the buildings.
So on day one, we're specifying a 2.5 to 3 inch caliper, which is it's not a small tree, it's not a large tree, on day one. And what that's going to do is, because of that size, it's going to experience planting shock a little less intensively, so to give a better percentage of survival. So yes, canopy will grow, will get big, and there will be some maintenance required, potentially on that building side. However, tree canopies don't tend to reach out where there's shade. They're going to want to kind of, go where it's a little easier and head towards the light a little bit more. So what you'll find is that canopy will probably be a little heavier on the non-building side than on the building side. So that'll kind of naturally kind of keep it away from the building.
Other questions? All right,
Traffic would be next.
terrific.
Hello, my name is Nathan Brackett. I'm a traffic engineer with Time Bond. I have about 18 years experience. I just want to run through a few slides with you tonight. Thank you very much for your time. Let me share my screen. Okay, so this is just an aerial of the site. Name of the project, I'm sure you're all very familiar with where this is. Just thought it was a nice aerial. Here's the context of the site in relation to some neighboring intersections. So you can see that small roundabout here. You can see the signal down at Main Street in Route 6A. And then you can see the site here, abutting the bike trail in the back with frontage on 6A. So we did a traffic impact study, which was shared with the board. I didn't receive any feedback or questions about that as of yet, but the study just summarizes the different land uses on the site that are being proposed. So there's 7 units of single family homes, 10 units of townhomes, and 61 apartments, all with the different ITE land use codes associated with them. So this is just a summary table adding those up. You can see the entering, exiting, and total volumes here expected in the weekday AM, weekday PM, and Saturday midday peak. We did take our initial counts in April, and those counts were adjusted seasonally as appropriate on the Cape, and also grown to a future condition, which is standard for a traffic impact study. So here is just a summary figure of the trips by time period. You can see the trips that don't have any annotation are AM trips, and then in the parentheses are PM trips, and in the brackets are Saturday trips. So here are the 2 site drives, which are pretty close to what we see out there today in terms of their configuration and location. And you can see the magnitude of the trips It's overall fairly minimal when we're adding to the existing roadway traffic. You can see the highest trip here is westbound through the Main Street signal during the AM peak as people are leaving their residences. But most of the other trips are kind of in the 8 to 10 vehicle range. I only have a few slides, but here are some of the key takeaways that I had from the traffic impact study and preparing that. The overall level of service in the AM PM is level of service C, level of service D during the Saturday midday peak. There's no change at all in overall level of service between the existing no build and build conditions. So there were a couple nominal changes to movements themselves, but it was by a matter of a few seconds of delay. And it was just teetering on the threshold of one level of service to the next. Nothing was level of service F. Everything was E or better. I think there was only a handful of E's in the whole network for individual movements. The Route 6A movements are LOSA during all time periods at the site driveways. And this is just a recap of the earlier table that we saw. The AM peak has 52 total trips, entering plus exiting. PM has 60 total, and the Saturday has 43 total. As I mentioned, there was nominal impacts to traffic during all three peak periods. There was no significant collision pattern that we found. We did do a review of the historic crash data in the area, and the site distances were deemed adequate in both directions from both site driveways. The AASHTO requirement for 35 miles an hour was 290 feet, and we ended up measuring around 390 feet or more in both directions. And even the 290 feet is a little bit conservative because the speeds we measured were actually a little bit less than that. They were only 32 miles an hour and 33 miles an hour. And yeah, that's really all I have for my traffic presentation.
Any questions? Austin?
I have a slew of questions from reviewing the document earlier.
Sure thing.
If other folks want to give me a break, just feel free to chime in. One of the things I wasn't sure of with the as-built condition that's proposed, in the capacity and queue analysis in the no-build condition, it was noted that the eastbound right turn movement, I believe this is the bypassing turn that goes onto Route 28 that does not go through the rotary, is beyond available storage in the current state and the no-build condition. With the as-built condition, is there any expectation that that's going to get worse? And at what point does it reach a critical mass where you start to see impacts and significant backups?
So you're referring to this table 2 here?
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. So we're talking about this eastbound right, that's correct? Unsignalized roundabout eastbound right. Yes, so we do see an increase in the expected queues, but we have to keep in mind that these are 95th percentile queues. These are not average queues for unsignalized intersections. The highway capacity manual does not provide average queue lengths. So we're talking about, 5% of the time it's expected to reach this length. And in terms of vehicles, we see a change between the existing and no build for the eastbound left through, between the existing and no build, and then there is an increase in the build here. But from 75 to 225 is 50 feet, so that's approximately 2 vehicles, slightly over 2 vehicles. And we didn't deem that would be an impact to traffic, because as you mentioned, those will kind of slip and bypass. I think the analysis software may be a little bit conservative in this case with what it's presenting, but we didn't see that as an issue with spillback.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
The next question I have is, as it relates to the breakdown between the westerly and the easterly driveways on people entering and exiting the property. I believe it's currently set to a 60-40 split. I think predominantly the westerly, if I remember correctly. I guess leaving the property is primarily left-hand turns, which would be easterly, and 60% right-hand turn westerly. Is that the right breakdown? What goes
So you're-
into that, given the, the majority of the parking spots do appear to be on the, rather, super majority of the parking spots are going to be on the westerly side, as opposed to the 7 units on the easterly side?
Yeah, so what went into that was sort of the directionality split of the existing traffic on 6A itself. But you're exactly right, this could be shifted slightly, and even if this was 50-50 or if we swapped them, I wouldn't expect a different result.
Okay, that was my next
Just-
question.
Yeah.
And
No,
at any point, did it seem as though a left-hand turn restriction on either of the driveways was going to be warranted, or does the traffic study not drive that conclusion?
Yeah, no, we didn't explicitly evaluate that. I would not expect a restriction would be needed at all, just because of the conflicting volume that we're expecting opposing those left-hand movements. People may have to, wait for a gap, but there should be sufficient gaps to get both into and out of the site.
Great, thank you. Other question I have is, the traffic study was done in, I think it was late April 2025, I believe, and then the values were adjusted to peak summer traffic in July, based on, I forget the study or the origin of that data, but resulted in about a 44% increase in traffic in July versus April. The location of that was the 124 Old Queen Anne intersection. And I'm wondering, when it comes to adjusting for seasonality, is the type of road something that needs to be considered? The only reason I ask that is the Old Queen Anne Route 124 intersection is a forced intersection if you're trying to go to the highway or cross the highway from the south, whereas this is a somewhat of an optional road through the center of town that has more business use as opposed to just being a pinch point. The 44% number seems slightly low just from my personal frustration on the roads these days, and so I figured I'd ask if there's anything that needs to be adjusted for an intersection that is a pinch point versus a throughway, and this being a, I forget what they called it, a principal arterial.
Yes, no, that's a very logical question for sure. This, so the origin of that was the nearest continuous count station data, which we could compare over a long period of time to see the adjustment. If we had something that was a better data point on a roadway more similar to this, we could have used that as well, but it could have just been more of a snapshot worth of data instead of continuous counting location, where we can get a nice mass of data over a long period of time to develop that growth rate. So we thought that the quality of the data itself kind of overrode a small point in time type taking of that data, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the concerns, or I guess the next step is if it is under predicting traffic, I guess it would imply that this site would have a lower proportional impact or lower proportional increase on the increase in traffic. I just don't have a great feel for what the critical mass is for when you start to see traffic buildups, and if that number were off by, I don't know, 20 or so %, would that substantially change the results of this traffic study? Is there a large sensitivity to what the peak summer traffic is?
So I'm not 1,000% sure on what that teetering value would need to be to have a substantial impact. But if we increased the growth factor, the mainline volumes would go up, but these site-related volumes would remain the same. So that would show kind of a smaller impact on the local roadway volumes, if that makes sense. So I know it sounds a little bit backwards, but it's more conservative to have the slightly smaller growth. There was a lot of data points used to develop that growth, so I feel very confident that it's accurate for this area and representative. But if it was higher than that, I would expect the same results here. I can't tie a percentage to it. What kind of increase would kind of put you beyond that teetering point? But I would expect that it could handle substantially more growth and still be sufficiently operating close to the no-build condition.
Okay. And then that gets to my last question. Is there a quantitative success criteria for traffic study pass fail, or is there an area where it's up to expert judgment?
Yeah, so there's engineering judgment that goes into different portions of the traffic impact study for sure. And this one is on the lower impact side of studies that I've done, but it really comes down to the appetite for any type of increase in traffic of the local community versus the benefit of the proposed development.
Great. Thank you, Nathan.
Yep, no problem. Great
Mr. Bell,
question.
please.
If you could, please, this is a lot of information. Could you just recap, like, for the months of June, July, August? Is it minimal increase you're stating? Can you just, like, generalize?
Oh, so we counted in April while the schools were in session, and then we adjusted that April data upward by, I think it was 44%. I can double check in the report itself. We increased those values pretty substantially to represent that peak summer condition in July.
And the result
Before-
being?
The result, oh, you want to know the
Yeah,
final turning movement volumes? I see what you mean.
exactly.
Yeah, so let me just share. This was the study itself, so I can just go to these figures that might help clarify slightly. Let's see. Sorry, my Adobe is loading. Bluebeam is loading a little bit slow. Here we go. So this is the document that we sent along. There are some figures here. So you can see here.
The document was sent to whom?
Yeah.
This is in the original application, the 400-page document that we got first time around.
The big roll.
Big one.
So here are the existing counts that we took. And here are the expected no-build volumes. Here are the 2025 existing conditions traffic volumes. So these already show the adjustment. So I don't have one that shows the unadjusted values. These are adjusted for the summer condition. So let me go to maybe this growth. I have some backup data for the growth here, sorry. Okay, sorry, there we go. So I did use this data Cape Cod Traffic Trends website. It seemed to be very helpful and had a lot of information in it. And then it just compares the trends. This one was April to July, adjustment factors by year. COVID was excluded. And then here you can see 2021 to 2024. This is the growth we ended up using was an average annual growth of 1.1%. And then we compounded that over 7 years to get the no build and build conditions.
Because I would say that in my experience in just using that road quite often, and I understand this is an important project, so one has to weigh it against that, but there will be an incredibly, I would say, a large increase in traffic in the summer months. It won't be minimal.
Jerry?
Oh, no, it's, the seasonality is not minimal. You're correct.
Yeah.
I was just saying that the impact of the proposed development on the local roadway system, in my opinion, is minimal. That's all I meant by that, I'm sorry.
I see.
Bob, please.
I think it's important to note that our year-round population goes from approximately 6,000 to 20,000 in the summertime. That's a dramatic increase. It's certainly more than 44%. So I think we need to see those actual numbers. I mean, those of us that live here know that the traffic backs up in front of Ace all the time. So it would be good to have a number that actually reflected not 44%, but I can't do the math in my head, but when you go from 6,000 to 20%, to 20,000, I think that's like a 2/3 change.
So what does the 44% mean? So Bob's referring to the population increasing by 67%. You're talking, what does the 44% actually mean in layman's terms?
It's the increase expected from April to July,
Coming
based
in,
on the,
coming in and
based
out,
on the date.
coming in and out of this project?
Not coming out of this project, at a point nearby that has continuous count data that can be interpreted. So it's not on this roadway itself. It's representative of that area.
Uh, 6A being a state highway, is there any state review of this document? Or any state input into this issue?
I don't believe this was submitted to the state. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
They have
Sorry, I'm not sure who
they have a
exactly
heavy
this was
hand on
submitted
everything
to.
else. They have a heavy hand on rotaries and everything else, but they don't have a heavy hand on volume. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions on traffic? Mr. Freeman?
Just sit here and be a little more comfortable
Sure.
with my fancy reading glasses.
Know what you have.
Just briefly on the question of the site management and the interrelationship of the phases and how it's going to be managed. So I did send a memo. I apologize that it just came delayed. Best
Pull the
intent.
mic a little closer.
I'm sorry, sure. Thank you. So on site management and the interrelationship of the three phases, just a quick summary of the memo that I just submitted, and I apologize that it was last minute. Some of this is a bit obvious, but at the time of the Phase 1 project closing, after the permitting, obviously, the town will convey our Lot 1, which is the POA project. It's actually, as you know, a development that's co-developed by POA and Housing Assistance Corp., but for ease of reference, I'm just calling that the POA parcel because it's the apartments as opposed to the townhouses. So that will be conveyed to the entity that will own and manage and rent those apartments, the 61 apartments. Lot 2 will be conveyed to Housing Assistance Corp. For the development of the 10 townhouse condominium homeownership units. And then the town will also convey what we are calling Phase 3, but it's the lots 3 through 9, which are the 7 individual single-family homes that Habitat will be building and selling as part of their normal program for individual eligible homeowners. In terms of the overall management, the intent is that all of the phases will function as one cohesive site. And one example is that there'll be cross easements for vehicular and pedestrian access. Everybody living there will be able to use all parts of the site other than parking. Parking will be as per the phase, and the Habitat homes, as you know, will have will have driveways for their vehicles. But everybody living there will have access to everything, the green space, the walkways down to the bike trail, and all the roadways through the development. There is an entity that POA has separate from the development entity that's called POA Communities or POA Management, and they will have the overall management responsibility for the entire site, meaning the roadways, the parking areas, except for the condominium parking areas and the single-family home parking areas. And they will manage all of the utilities, stormwater maintenance, snow plowing, and there will be cross easements. It's certainly way premature to draft them, but we've done it many times. There will be cross easements for all of the maintenance responsibilities, the snow plowing, the stormwater management, use of the utilities, and also, naturally very important, a cost-sharing agreement where there'll be prorated division of each of the separate phases and developments that would contribute to the cost of all of that management. The homeowner association for the individual habitat homes would be responsible for making sure those fees are paid, and likewise with the condominium association. So that's just a quick overview, and I did provide, because I think you folks had asked for it, I provided as samples. They're not going to be the exact documents, but Habitat has naturally done this many times on their own developments, so we submitted, again, I apologize, just today, samples of a declaration of protective covenants and easements for a single-family homeowner association development, and likewise the declaration of trust that establishes the homeowner association for another Habitat development. So I just wanted to give you that brief overview, and, naturally, any questions now or in the future. So,
I presume that the homeowners and the condominium owners will have some attribution of overall costs for the project in addition to their individual units and building.
yes.
How is that attribution decided?
Well, we've discussed that, and we're not 100% sure. We were thinking that it could be prorated based on the proportional number of units as to the phases, but there are actually some components of maintenance, such as snow plowing, where the apartment buildings naturally have the largest number of parking spaces and therefore basically utilize and should be responsible, we believe, cost-wise, for more of a pro rata share on something like snow plowing. On the rest of the different aspects that have costs, like the utilities, which of course will be coming across the roadways, under the roadways, serving all of the different buildings, something in the range of pro rata per the number of units is probably how it will be done. So it's not etched in stone, but that's a very logical and good question, and we've been discussing that.
Well, the individual units are all individually metered, right? So you're talking about,
Oh, no, those are the fees for using it. I'm talking about the overall maintenance, if there is maintenance on stormwater systems and, on the ground, and at some point possibly utility repairs, things like that. Yeah, in terms of the metering of the monthly or yearly fees that go to the town, those would be individually metered.
do you have any experience with similar projects that have this mix of ownership with disputes over the attribution of costs? It seems to me that, there's common area costs. People in the individual homeowner units may not feel they should be paying for a lot of the common areas, they're covering their own areas. And
Yeah. Well, again,
is there any experience with other projects where this has become a conflict?
yes, sorry, I thought I turned out, when it comes into my audio earplugs, I just got to turn this off. I apologize.
My voice isn't.
Hope you can't hear it, but it's ringing in my ears. It's very disturbing. Sorry. Yes, and I don't know the dollar figures of how it's shared, but there are several projects that I've been involved in that have phasing and different ownership entities. So they're all rentals, the ones I'm familiar with. One is in Wareham, another one is in Barnstable, Village Green, and there are separate phases that are legally owned by separate entities, so the actual collection of rents from Building A versus Building B is to separate ownership, a separate entity, but because all of the access and the common parking and the little, as that project is called, Village Green, there's a central green that all three buildings, I think it is, share, and so there are three phases and three separate owners. They were built within a few years of each other, but at separate times, and there are cost sharing and cross easement agreements. What the dollar figures are, I don't know, but They, it's not that uncommon.
Yeah, well, here you tell you, that's 2 units, 2 individual entities. We're talking about several individual entities, and homeowners associations are famous for their litigiousness in terms of common expenses and arguments over those expenses. And it seems to me when you have individual homeowners, they're going to be looking very closely, especially as expenses rise, what percentage share they're paying for common areas, which they probably won't use much of.
Well, they may, I don't have any empirical
just-
data, although I am familiar with a lot of condominiums, et cetera. But, there's going to have to be a fair allocation. And from the business viewpoint, the partners in this development, they've discussed that. They're not concerned that it's going to be in any way overly burdensome to either the condo owners or the habitat owners. So, again, fair questions, and we're going to take that all into consideration as we set up the actual agreements. But all of these developers are very experienced in their particular special fields.
I'm worried about the homeowners.
No, I know, but I mean, in terms of understanding what the costs are and the implications to the homeowners, and they're going to be sensitive to that. I mean, you have, which I hope will give you comfort, nothing wrong with for-profit developers, but you have here for the home ownership units, Habitat, which is great experience and sensitivity to the needs of affordable young homeowners, first-time buyers, and likewise Housing Assistance Corp. With developments they've done. So they're all going to be very sensitive to that and make sure it is done fairly.
And there's always district court later to settle it.
Hopefully not, but that's
Yeah.
true.
Other questions? Austin?
First, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that for these, percentage of AMI type housing, there are certain caps on monthly rental costs based off of the size of the units. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely. HUD basically prepares them, and every year they change, and they're based on the income, and so in a formula that no more than 30% of the income can go towards the rent. So, yes,
Okay.
it's set, it's limited.
We were talking about, cost sharings of the folks who will be living in the properties. Is that something that would be an explicit fee on top of some rent, or for the folks in the building one, it would just be all inclusive of whatever their rent cost is?
Yes, number one, as to building, the rental units, buildings 1 and 2, the rent is the rent. Even for the market units, the rent is the rent, and whatever the maintenance costs are as part of the operating expenses that the owner, which will be, through the tax credit program and a partnership and an investment partnership, again, their experience with management, and there won't be any cost additional.
Okay. And then for the ownership property, the townhouses and the 7 Habitat houses, would that have an additional, because it would be, owned, there'd be monthly costs? I don't know if there's any for purchased percent AMI properties. Is there any sort of a restriction of monthly costs that, my fear is, you get to a point many years down the line, reserves run low, some special assessments needed. Are the homeowners going to be overly burdened by increases to HOA fees?
Yeah, all good questions, and we do face that with any affordable home ownership development. What happens with the condo budget or homeowner association budget, the projected cost at the time of getting permitted and then building the project it has to be fair, and the state agencies overview it, and they have experience. What that does, it plugs into the formula, so as opposed to a monthly rent limit for a rental project, the formula would, based on the reasonable projected condo fees or HOA fees, would lead to what the sales price is. If there are greater condo fees, which theoretically maybe there are a little bit because of the cost sharing, although we don't think it's going to be much extra, but if the costs are higher on a monthly basis and yearly basis, it would mean the sale price for the units that are restricted would be lower.
Understood.
In the future, and again, we face this all the time, it's certainly a real question if some large repair is needed or other costs that aren't anticipated, and then the unit owners would have to pay their pro rata share based on the common area assessments. The protection that should exist, and again, having, you know, the agencies oversee this at the start, meaning the state agencies, excuse me, is to build into the condo budget real reserves, not kick the can down the road, both operating reserve and capital reserve, most importantly, the capital reserve. And is that perfect? Maybe not, but, you know, these days, and I think even lenders on projects are going to insist that there are real, you know, real reserves built into the budget so that every month when everybody pays their condo fees, there's going to be money set aside for those things that, you know, you're legitimately anticipating down the road.
Great, thank you.
I just want to make sure I fully understand. So when this project is all done, the town will own none of the land, and the town will have no maintenance responsibility for any of these properties.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions on management? You know, before we open it up to further issues, I want to go back to the point that Bob raised, and I think it would be, as I hear people talking around town, they're very concerned about the issue of the lottery, basically, and who's eligible for the lottery. This is sold to the town as workforce housing. We get a lot of political support because it's for the teachers and the policemen and the firemen, and electricians, the plumbers, the people who are coming out of town because they can't afford to live here, but work here. And that, I think, is why there's great popular support for this project and all the affordable housing projects in town, frankly, because we all know that the people who come and work in our houses, or the policemen, the firemen, they all live out of town. They can't afford to live here. So I think it would be very helpful for us if you could explain the great mystery of how the process is done, how applicants are chosen, if there are any, you know, we've asked for, I noticed and Bob mentioned in your summary, Mr. Quinn, you talked about the EO, the state agency, executive office of something, allowed it for Barnstable residents. They gave a preference for Barnstable residents, but not to a town residency, at least as you described it in your memo. And I noticed that we've been talking about a town preference over and above any county preference. And so I guess it would be very helpful to all of us, not only here, but I think out in the great nether world here. How is that whole process done? It's a mystery to me. I've said on a couple of these things. It's just, we know the demand is great. You've sold us on that. We understand that. But then how is the selection process done? And is there any winnowing or credit? How is credit applied for, one, affiliations with Orleans, and two, employed people? Okay, if there's any way that people who have actual jobs and work in this area can get some sort of preference, as opposed to people out of area who may not be employed. That's sort of the.
Sure, I think Dave can, and Charlie came up also, they can answer. I think the first thing, Dave, is the statistic, which is relevant to Orleans for sure, from the 107.
Sure, yeah, I can start. Dave Quinn, Housing Assistance Corporation. I can start with just a little bit more information about some Orleans data. I have information about 107 Main Street. I don't have information about the Penrose project. We did not run that lottery, but perhaps we could reach out and see if we could get it. So the final lease-up data at 107 Main Street, 11 of the 14 residents, so that's 78%, either lived in Orleans, or were residents of Orleans prior, work in Orleans, or have children in the school district. So that's, we ended up with about a 78% local preference units. And the question was how many Orleans applicants were there. So I did have some data. There were 31 applicants were living in Orleans, out of 31 eligible applicants for that project out of 229 Cape-wide. So 411 eligible applicants. And then the information I provided was, I said 500. Those 500 total applicants, 411 of those were eligible applicants, so they met the income criteria. Of those, 31 applicants were from Orleans. And so the way this lottery worked, which would be the same way that likely Governor Prince's lottery would work, is that there's an open marketing period where anyone is eligible to apply. Typically, that's a 60-day open marketing period where we're posting it far and wide in all the local newspapers, online. There's some required places that we have to post it. We get all the applications in. The town can request a local preference. And so the town can request up to 70% of the units from the initial lottery go to local residents, and that's defined as Orleans residents in the school system, families with children in the school system, or people who work in Orleans. The reference in my memo to Barnstable County-wide local preference was that in some recent projects, towns, in addition to a town local preference, have also said would like to add an additional regional local preference. The idea being, technically, if somebody grew up in Orleans and moved to Eastham and now wanted to apply to be a Governor Prince, by the strictly municipal-only local preference, they would not be considered a local. So some towns have decided to request a regional local preference where they've asked the state if they could have a special lottery local pool for anyone who's from Barnstable County. That's not required, but it's something that some other communities have done on recent projects. I'd say most towns request the local preference, just go with a standard 70% preference. And so how that works in practice is that when we get all the applications, one of the questions is, do you live, work, or have work in Orleans, or do you have children in the school system? We verify that, and then we put them in the first poll of the lottery is all from that local-only pool. And then we use that list until 70% of the units are full. And then we move to the open pool, which is anyone else who's applied can get the remaining 30% of the units. However, the locals are also in the open pool. So that's how, in the case of 107 Main Street, you ended up with more than 70% local preference, because we went through, we had the full lease up, 70% from the local pool. We moved to the open pool to fill up the remainder of the units, and some of those people also ended up being local residents as well.
David?
And then, once turnover occurs, who is eligible?
Anyone. The local preference is only allowed on the initial lottery.
Anyone, meaning,
It's open to the public. Yeah. So when a unit comes open, it gets posted on there's marketing requirements, so it gets posted. It's very similar to the initial lottery, but there is no specific local preference. So it's a first come, first serve system on future lease ups.
Jerry? Dave, I would love for the board to take you up in your offer to find out that same information from Penrose, because Penrose is a much larger project. and
We can ask, yeah.
Yeah, I think we really need to know that, because I think the residents that Jerry's spoken with, what I'm finding is a lot of folks have no idea this is even out there. But I think we need to really have hard numbers, because the town spent the money to acquire this property so that we could help out people that grew up working here, living here. And if you look at some of the information that's been given to us, it actually says that. So it would be just great to have that information. I appreciate it.
You can certainly ask. I mean, I think one thing I'd point out, I think it would be very interesting to have that information, but I also think that there's, a lot of situations where people maybe don't live here now, but would like to move here, or would like to work here, but don't currently, so they may not show up in those statistics as being local. Maybe they're, living in Wareham and commuting to the Outer Cape for their job. Now this opportunity comes up and they have the opportunity to live here. So I just want to point that out, because those types of situations would not show up in the data. It might seem, if you're looking at the data, like non-Cape Codders applying, but that might only be part of the story. So.
And just something briefly before Charlie, I think, wants to chime in, but the outreach, so that as many local Orleans people as possible have full awareness. There is a very robust affirmative, it's typical letters, multiple letters, A, H, A, Affirmative fair housing marketing plan, affirmative fair housing marketing plan. And it has very robust requirements that the state has standards, and, you know, Housing Assistance Corp. Has done it many times, and other lottery agents. And it's a very, very, detailed set of things that are submitted to the state for review before they approve the plan, as to where the advertisements will be, where you have meetings, and how you reach out to the community. So that's why there have been sufficient applicants from whatever town it is to usually fill up the 70%.
Yep. Thank you, Peter. You actually stole my thunder. I was going to make that point. But in addition to that, I just wanted to add that on the turnover of units when we lease them back up, because of fair housing laws, we're restricted in who we can allow back into the unit. So we couldn't, for example, set a preference for Orleans residents on turnover of those units. Fair housing laws dictate that we do have to open it up to the broader market. And as a second point, in order to get the financing that we need from the state level, from EOHLC, they require that we participate in something called the Housing Navigator, which is a website, which is basically a resource that includes every affordable housing unit in the state of Massachusetts. So it's open to the public. It's an easy way for folks to find affordable housing across the state. And so we couldn't even restrict where we advertise the units. It goes up on a state website that's, public, and everyone's able to view those units. So certainly the initial local preference is our best tool to make sure that we are including local residents in that initial lease-up.
And is that likely to be approved by the state?
I would think so. I don't see why not. It's fairly common.
Yeah, I've never had a project that wasn't. I mean, you do have to apply and make your case, but all of our projects that I've been involved in have been approved. One other thing I'd like to add is, so the 200% AMI units, the 10 condo units, we may have some additional flexibility there, so those units are not getting state funding, so that we obviously still have to follow affirmative fair housing guidelines, but I think that might fall more under the seasonal communities rules in terms of how how the local preference applies. For example, we're doing a project now, we're about to go through permitting in Chatham for a project, and the town is requesting 6 of the units out of 12 units to be municipal employee preference. So there may be some things we could work with the town on and explore. If there's I can't promise that because.
No, that would be great. I mean, you are collaborating with the town of Orleans on this project, so anything like that.
Yeah, so I think the seasonal communities guidelines, it's a newer thing, but we're open to, seeing what we may be able to do with those 200% AMI units, because there's less, or there's no state funding currently, planned to go towards those units, yeah.
Other questions on that issue?
Can I make one additional comment
Elizabeth,
on
please.
that? Thank you. Elizabeth Jenkins, Assistant Director of Planning and Community Development. 2 points without diving deep into the FAIR data. I can tell you just off the top of my head that I know so they had a different local preference because there were a number of communities that contributed funds in the Lower Cape. But I know off the top of my head that over 50% of the applicants of that lottery qualified for local preference, and all but 5 of those units went to Barnstable County residents. So again, a very sort of matching up with David's statistics from other projects across the Cape. I also wanted to remind the board on the issue of local preference that when the select board took this matter up to provide comment, they did make a recommendation to the board in their letter that we do request a local preference with this project, that local preference is specifically for Orleans residents, those who are employed in the town of Orleans, and those who have children at Orleans Elementary School, because there was some question about that in previous, because we have a regional school district specifying Orleans Elementary School. And as was suggested, behind that there be additional consideration for residents in Barnstable County. So typically the jurisdiction to request local preference falls with the select board. That was the recommendation they made to this board on the issue of the lottery.
Elizabeth, following up on that, so we had how many applicants that qualified from Orleans that lived here, worked here for 107 Main Street. 41, did you say?
The only number I was able to pull up quickly on my phone is that 31 of the applicants had an Orleans address on their application, so.
Okay, so that's 31, and over at Penrose, there are, how many units, 72?
62 units.
62, and half of that would be 31.
So those were the applicants who applied in the lottery. So the fair lottery, I think, had close to 600 applicants.
But how many were Orleans working, living, or grew up here?
I don't have that number on me. Pulling those off the top of my head.
Okay, well, no, I appreciate that, but
Yeah.
I really would like to see some hard numbers, because just adding some things up in my head,
Yeah.
you're coming up with around a total of 75 actual Orleans folks, and
I think it was close to 80, I want to say,
Well, but-
at fair.
right, but we've already built 62 plus 12 affordable units. So I just think we need the hard numbers, that's all I'm saying.
I
And
appreciate
I know they're
that.
out there, and I know you'll get them.
No, and I do want to echo David's comment as well, as the sort of housing-facing person on staff here. I do want to emphasize the frequency of the calls I get from individuals who have moved out of Orleans for various reasons over their lifetime and are looking to come back, either to be with friends, to support family. It is not unusual for me to get a call a week along those lines, somebody looking to come back to Orleans for reasons. And none of those people would qualify for a local preference. So,
In
But
our estimation, if they grew up here, they should qualify.
well, so the,
is that, so is that something that can be,
It's a very, I mean, it's a very strict
Yeah.
state
Okay.
definition. I mean, I suppose we could ask, but I think they're very strict about exactly how that's interpreted, which is,
correct.
part of the problem with local preference, because
is there
it doesn't capture that.
anything wrong with asking on the application? Or,
we've done a lot of local preference applications in this room, and I've never seen one that would allow
never
that, because you have to have some, right, because it's all documented, right? You have to have some documentation of your current residence, of your current employment, for example.
to
So there's a
prove-
very robust
You have to
eligibility
prove your
process.
residency
Yeah.
from 30 years ago. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Report cards.
I think it's just to say that in supporting local preference, it is not necessarily, it is not necessarily a solution to everyone's housing problem. Our housing challenges are diverse. Certainly, we want to give sort of first priority to those who are here, but there are many who have ties to this community who may not qualify for local.
I just want to say, it may sound petty-minded of us and exclusive of us to insist on this, but it is this. First of all, it's little enough. It's only a 1 year, and it is what sells the projects. It is what builds popular support for these things. So it's very practical. It's not just petty-mindedness by local residents who want to see this thing. It's how you build support, frankly, in the community. It's a fact that people say, well, I understand it, and I know there's all these people, all my plumbers, electricians, and all the people who come to my house, they come a long way, they can't live here. And we even had our own town manager had her story, much touted in the local press, how she couldn't afford to live here. So that's what builds the support. Without the local 70%, I don't think there'd be much support in any town, frankly. But
And I'll mention that if you win a lottery and local preference, it gives you the ability to apply for a unit. You still have to meet, you still have to have an application, a credit check, for example, the income to be able to pay the rents at 80%. So local preference winning a lottery in a local preference situation doesn't necessarily guarantee you a spot. It guarantees you the ability to file an application.
On that, if someone were to be pulled in the 70% local preference and then ultimately not qualify, would their lottery slot then re-enter the 70% local preference or the general population? I don't know. That doesn't seem like it's a very high probability, but just curious from the numbers perspective.
If they were in the local preference and then when they applied for the unit, they didn't meet one of those criteria.
Correct.
Well, Well, no, if they didn't meet their criteria, it would be because on their final review, they didn't have, they didn't income qualify, didn't have the income to pay rent, or didn't pass a background check or something like that, which would exclude them from, getting any unit.
And then their slot that they had won would then go
Next
to
person on
lottery.
Would go to the next, until we get to 70%, we'll just keep going down the local preference list.
Okay, but I just wasn't sure if half the people who got local preference couldn't do it, does that 35% then go to?
First thing you do is you go down until the local preference list is exhausted, and then you move to the open, yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Other questions? Is there anyone in the audience wishes to testify or speak? Please, sir.
Good evening. Andrew Miao from, I'm an architect. Mr. Chairman, at the end of last meeting, a site plan, alternate site plan was presented that I thought had great merit. Is it possible to bring that up to discuss? Because there were some wonderful things about it, green space and so forth.
I don't know exactly what you're referring to. Does,
The plan brought by Sybil.
Sybil's plan, yeah. Well, I think we had some testimony that at this point in the project, it wasn't feasible to make that significant a change.
The comment was that it would be too expensive. However, I wondered whether the board is satisfied with a comment like that to dismiss it.
Jerry, may I ask something?
Please, Sybil.
Which, and I'm glad that this was brought up just simply because in the last hearing, Elizabeth never got up to explain how that site plan was presented. And I wish you had done that before, and I believe George was perhaps going to speak on that tonight, but he's not here. And there was merit. I didn't do that just because I thought I should. But I was told by our town planner and our assistant town planner that I could present it, so that there was merit to presenting it.
Right.
And could you speak to that, Elizabeth?
So I think it is this board's responsibility to review the application that was presented before you. And I think we've talked a number of times that this project, as in this stage, is part of a larger continuum of this project that began with the town purchasing the property at town meeting, putting a group together, a citizens group, conducting a robust process, putting together an RFP, issuing an RFP, and selecting the developers you have in front of you tonight with a conceptual plan very consistent with what you see in front of you today as the award. I think we communicated to Sybil that, again, your role, all of your roles as Zoning Board of Appeals members in this application, as in all Zoning Board of Appeals, all applications that come in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals, is to review the applications before you based on the findings that we have under Chapter 40B, and we laid those out for you at the first hearing. Certainly, Sybil, you have unique talents as an architect, and said yourself that you sort of express your comments in a visual form, and certainly not, certainly your right as a zoning board member, I think, to express comments. But again, as we spoke to, as we spoke at the last hearing, this project again is part of a continuum. And while we appreciate that as input, again, generally the role of the board is to evaluate and provide comment on the project that is before you. And I think that's the direction that was provided.
Jerry, I'm sorry, Jennifer, but from what I have in front of me that was provided by our building inspector and comes from the state of Massachusetts regarding this whole process, it gives us quite a lot of say. And I think personally that Sybil's request was a reasonable one, that we could ask any proponent that needs our permission to have a comprehensive permit to consider. Now, it may not make sense to put it in that very corner, but piggybacking on her idea, I think the plan would be dramatically better if the Habitat lots were switched to the other side. Because then they'd be up against small buildings. Right now, you've got the Habitat buildings on one side, about a substantial commercial, two-story commercial buildings, and the poor souls, their front yard, they're gonna be looking into this gigantic building. That's just bad planning as far as I'm concerned. And why you couldn't just mirror it, I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, we have the authority to say, we can even say, you know, we want you to cut the density down. We can say a lot of things, but to simply say, oh, we've presented the project, we can't change it, fine, then don't approve it.
You know, I think what's difficult for us as a board is that I used to represent people in front of this board before I got on it, and I always told them, just go in with preliminary plans. Don't ever go in with finished construction documents. Don't ever go in with a finished site plan, with sewer connection design. And that's common sense. And I think most people that come before our board do just that. And this puts us in a very awkward position, because I don't know why the planning board and the site plan review committee and the architectural review committee, when were these, I don't understand that, how it got totally completed. And all we can do is make minor architectural exterior elevation changes according to your attorney. At least that's the way at least that's the way you represented it the last time you spoke. No, excuse me, Mark, I'd like to hear from the attorney.
Sure. In this project, there's two dynamics. It's not just the normal 40B law, which I would still submit a major site redesign as a redesign, as Elizabeth said, that does go beyond what is typically allowed under 40B. You have to have a reason that would be supported by your local laws, bylaws, and other regulations that would say that approving our plan basically protects some local need that is more important than the housing need. That's the formula, the balancing test. And I know it's difficult for permitting authorities, but 40B was intended to basically tilt the normal process in favor of the housing
Is
development.
it friendly 40B?
But the
doesn't
same,
seem friendly.
the same standards, well, we've been working with you, so I hope you would think that, we've been very responsible and we've responded. But the other aspect, which is partially what Elizabeth said and what I said last time, is there is the whole history of the development with various town boards and the select board and the committees and the review that came up essentially with this plan. So it makes it that much more difficult to make a substantial change. So, those are the reasons legally why I still submit that I think that would be too much of a change at this stage.
What are the
Now,
legal grounds?
Well, sorry, keep going.
I mean, no, if you make a change that we don't agree with, then you have to be able to prove that there's a reason that your local considerations, existing rules and regulations would be so detrimentally affected
But
that it
why are we
outweighs the
calling it
housing need.
friendly
That's the standard.
40B then? I don't get it.
Because it is a town-sponsored 40B. And I do recognize that the zoning board comes into this process, in a regulatory role after there has been a very robust public process to get here. Again, the town put together an application, or put together a committee that made recommendations, of which, in my assessment, this application is largely consistent with. The developers responded to an RFP, and with that RFP included a draft preliminary plan that the town evaluated and again selected the developer. We have a real property
I guess
disposition.
there's a problem with the process
Yeah.
then, isn't there?
Well, so we have a
No,
real
but-
property disposition agreement, an agreement with the applicant to develop the site in substantial conformance with the plan that they submitted with that RFP. And it is through the evolution of that process that they come here to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Again, the town is the property owner, and I would say, you know, I would say I feel like they have at least the building elevations that are before us today, I think have improved dramatically
Oh,
as a result.
I give kudos to the architect. I think what you've done with Building 1 is tremendous. I'm not talking about building, I think your response to this board has been great. That's not what we're talking about right now.
No, and I respect where you're coming from, and I've done all kinds of hearings, and, you know, sometimes the term friendly is a misnomer. It's not intended to imply that that you don't have any oversight. Obviously, we've been responsive, as you just acknowledged. The other things in terms of, a friendly 40B is we voluntarily went through, but also at the urging of the other town boards who, awarded the project to us. We went to architectural design review, which we didn't have to, and we, went to site plan review twice. And, they were all satisfied. So, again, that's
I
an
understand.
aspect of.
It's unfortunate. This is probably the last project of this size that we'll ever see, but I think the process could have been helped.
Jerry, may I just add something?
Yeah, please do.
Comment? I believe that what I was trying to do and what this board is trying to do is to work together. That's the whole point. This is a very important project for the town. We're all on the same side. And we're just trying to see if we could improve it. And according to the letter that we also received from the select board, aesthetics is one of the areas that we need to look at. And if we're all just trying to work together as a team, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, I don't gainsay that, and I said it and I repeat it, and I was sincere. I wasn't just saying it, but I know that your intention in doing that was totally in good faith to, in your view, improve the project. Aesthetics, the site plan is part of aesthetics to a degree, but it was mostly the site plan things that are a major change. But, part of it is, and maybe that speaks to the process, and, I wasn't involved in terms of how the town set it up and all of that, which I'm not criticizing, but I hear you, I understand what you're saying. It just is too bad that something like that wasn't done earlier in the game. So, I think we hear you loud and clear. I don't want to ask our team, the developers and the architect, to respond, on the fly. I simply leave it that we may still say, we just don't think we can do that, but, we're going to have another hearing, so I know you're concerned about that, and again, in no way make promises, because I don't want to kid anybody, but I don't know, what else we can do tonight, so.
Yeah, I want to hear from Mark, but I just want to say, we started this the first night, became very evident when we talked about whether we should, whatever that initial procedure we did. It's not friendly, it's internecine almost. The town is sitting at that table with you. This is their proposal that other parts of the other bodies in this town have approved. And it's a crazy process that after the town has gone through this long process, they set out the RFP, request for proposal, with the conditions that the town fathers chose as the conditions. And now we're in the awkward position of saying to the town, well, we don't like what you've done. We're an instrumentality of the town. We're appointed by the selectmen to enforce or regulate the aesthetics of the town. But we're sort of at the end of the donkey. We're the tail. The donkey's already been created, and we're the tail sort of flapping around, flicking at flies.
And yet the select board is telling us we have all the power.
Well,
Jerry?
Mark, you want to tell us? Mark, please.
So,
I hear what you're saying, Dave, but I'm wondering where you were 3 years ago when the RFP process followed after the Governor Prent's committee looked at all the potentials for the site, you know, including performing arts centers and a fire station and everything else. We settled on housing. The Affordable Housing Trust then worked with the town planning office to create an RFP, put it out there. We had applicants send in their potential designs and their potential use for the site. And we went through hell because of some potential shortcomings in how that RFP was put together or the evaluation of it. But in the process of doing that, there were multiple meetings that dealt with the site plan itself, the architecture that was presented by the applicants, the buildings, the siting of those buildings, the notion of having this triumvirate of POA, housing assistance and habitat with home ownership as part of their project, as opposed to a Penrose application that was nothing but, as one person described it, you know, barracks from the Gulag of World War II. That took a year to go through that with multiple meetings where we had the architectural.
Who was we, Mark?
That was the housing, the Affordable Housing Trust and the Select Board with the town manager as the procurement officer. Multiple meetings with both financial consultants on the project and architectural consultants on the project. And these designs were presented at that time. And they were vetted at that time. And ultimately, it was the vote of the Affordable Housing Trust and the Select Board, and ultimately the decision of the procurement office of the town manager to award this project. And in the process, Penrose withdrew because they couldn't meet the criteria. And the project was awarded to this triumvirate. So all that was done, and we're sitting here now at the last minute saying, oh, well, you know, you come in here with a finalized plan. It was a finalized plan. It was a potential plan presented 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
And where was the public outreach?
The public outreach was in, the public outreach was in all of the
That's where the town
public.
has fallen short. It's like, it's the way we've fallen short with the police station. That, you know,
The
it's,
public outreach was in all of the public meetings and hearings that were held in this room, broadcast on that television and that internet, multiple times.
and why are all these people here tonight? Why weren't they a part, why weren't they taking?
Because
part
they
in those-
chose not to be part of it 2 years ago or 3 years ago
What-
when this process
but Doesn't
started.
there seem to be a difference that somehow the paper has gotten involved and we're at a point now where perhaps, however they were, this group was informed, they should have been informed 2 years ago. I understand where we are. I understand the awkward position that the design team is in. I think the process was terrible, and perhaps, it's just, it's, as I said, it's too bad. This is probably the last 40B the town's ever gonna do. And,
Well, unless somebody buys Post Office Square or something. Jerry?
Well-
Yeah, Bob, please.
I have a question for the.
Can I
Attorney
add-
Freeman. No,
can I
sorry,
add one more
excuse me.
thing in
No,
this?
1 second, please. So you're telling me that the pamphlet that Commonwealth gave to us that have to make this decision where it says, one of the advantages of Chapter 40B is that projects can be negotiated. ZBAs frequently try to negotiate reductions in density. scale of proposed buildings, architectural design, unit sizes, so on and so forth. That's not true, is that what you're saying?
No, sir, and I never said that was not true. That's
Is
a
it
very May I give you an explanation?
Please.
It doesn't call for a yes or no question. It's
The
not.
last time, excuse
The
me,
way
the
you're
last time we
interpreting
had
it
this
is not accurate.
conversation,
It's
you
not a
said
question
no.
of true, it's not a question of true or false. I didn't say that that document doesn't exist. What I said is, that's very general. And specifically, I also pointed out of those things that you read, none of them says alter the site plan substantially. But more importantly, the case law, which isn't mentioned in there, very clearly has holdings from Housing Appeals Committee upheld by the courts that it is not up to the ZBA to redesign the project unless they're related to what I said twice a little while ago. The overall standard is the balancing test.
So it comes down to us determining what the actual need is for Orleans residents, and then you were left with, if we decide that the Orleans resident need doesn't justify this, our only choice is to turn it down. Is that what you're saying?
No, because that would be a wrong analysis of all the data and the information that you have.
No,
Plus
sir,
the
you have
legal
not
standard-
answered the questions
plus the-
about the need. You have not.
The statistics speak to the need, and the standard in the 40B law, the statute itself, is regional housing need. So by agreeing to a local preference, which we don't have to do at all, if everything else you were satisfied with 100,000%, but you imposed a local preference need, rather requirement, and we objected, it would in all likelihood not be upheld because the standard under the state statute, not interpretations of regulations and everything else, says regional housing need. But what I'm saying about that pamphlet, it's not very specific in terms of dealing with situations like this. Number one, it doesn't speak to a major redesign. I mean, there is negotiation, and the things that we've worked on with you on have been, appreciated, as some of your members have said. But it's just the combination of the factors that we've all been talking about, Elizabeth, Mark, and me, as well as the understanding of 40B law. So,
Mr. Quinn, you want to help us here?
Yeah,
You comment to
Yeah,
make?
maybe this is an attempt to bring the temperature down a little bit, if I can. I think from the developer side of things, speaking on behalf of Housing Assistance, POA, Habitat, I think we do sympathize with the position you're in, because this board was not involved in the process from the very beginning. But I think the awkward situation we find ourselves in is that, we've spent 2 years on this design. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think over $700,000 on design costs. To do a redesign of what's being proposed is very substantial, and, may put the project at risk to have to go back and do that. I mean, without additional funds, it really impacts the bottom line of the project. So that's, I guess, just to kind of put it out there bluntly, it's not that we're opposed to thinking about different configurations. I just think it's a math and time problem, and so
No,
it
it
puts us
it
in a
was
really,
the process, it was the process. I'm not,
yeah.
Hello?
So it's, yeah. So just kind of laying it out there, I think, I hope it's not perceived that we're trying to be difficult and resist, reasonable requests, but I think a very big, complete
Just lucky you
redesign.
only need 3 votes. That's
Okay,
where we are.
May I add one thing? I think just to give a broader perspective on this project, that Citizens Committee did go through a 13-month public process to provide input into what went into the RFP. And one of the key components of this project that makes it, I think, incredibly unique and incredibly challenging and incredibly beneficial is that we do have 3 different project partners here. This is not a 100% low-income housing tax credit project like you see in so many other places across the Cape. This is a truly unique project in that it has affordable rental, market rate home ownership, and affordable single-family housing. So I think although we might have comments on the site plan, we have 3 not-for-profit developers here who are collaborating in the best interest of their client and bringing us a project that they think that we will be successful. So this is a unique challenge, I think, for all of us here, because we are not doing a simple project. We are doing 3 components of a project in response to what we as a town asked for to meet our town's housing needs.
Yeah. The gentleman in the back, please. We'll get you, Mr. Miao, later.
Thank you. My name is Mark Norjo. I live on Barley Neck Road, and I've been here coming on 80 years. I've got a pretty familiar situation on what's going on in the town. I've been on committees since 1970, continuous, but I've sort of ceded some of my activity to other members of the town because they're younger people that need to have a voice. And I'm a little ambivalent about that, and so I speak to Mark as far as, coming late. I'm late, and I'll admit it for a moment. But I will say also that if you build a ship and it's on the way and it's going to go down, it's a nice ship and you spend $1 million or $2 million or whatever it is, and somebody tells you it's going to sink, you don't send it down the way. And I like the HAC and the Habitat for Humanity formats. I think they work. I think that part of the reason Mr. Quinn mentions the numbers about the 107 and how we've had good activity, it's the size. It's the size of the project that becomes attractive to the people that want to be there. The people, there are our nephews and our neighbors and so on and so forth. And I talk to a lot of people, and I hear frequently things that I don't hear here tonight, and that, except, I've heard it from the committee, but there are people that say, who qualifies for this? How come nobody, how come I don't know anybody that's going into these projects? And that question is tantamount to whether that project should go forward. I found this to be an interesting evening tonight. I learned some things that I didn't know before, but it used to be when you went before the ZBA that you had to prove a hardship. I understand this is a different situation. But there is a hardship. It's a latent hardship, and that is that our children and our grandchildren are going to have to bear the costs of these great projects that are going on. I look at the project that's in the underground mall, which I understand. I don't know. I don't know if it's 40B. I don't understand that nomenclature, but it's a large project, and it looks like hell, honestly. We would have been better with a plumbing store, I think. But then you take the Penrose project at the Cape Cod 5, which is another giant property, and I hear people saying, what's going on there? Is anybody paying attention to what is happening at that place? And now we talk about the Governor Prince. The Governor Prince property was purchased without knowledge of what it was going to be. And I believe, Mark, and again, as a selectman, you'll agree, it was purchased without knowing what it was going to be. And so now we've sort of focused in, and I think it's good. I think it's out of scale terribly. It's over top of the church. It's over top of the art gallery down below. It's big. And I think that what the town really needs is the smaller projects that are ownership occupied, where people have a hand in what's going on. And I know, I'm going to say something that I know you're going to say you can't do, but I would suggest that this zoning board of appeals request that this project be tabled until we can determine exactly what has happened with these other projects, to assimilate what has happened with the larger projects in town. Are we getting people from Springfield, Massachusetts because they can come here? Is it benefiting our kids? And I think the answer to that is yes, you're going to get Springfield, and no, it's not going to help our kids. They don't qualify. They just, so many that I've spoken with just plain don't qualify. So that in a nutshell, I have a whole lot more I could say, but I appreciate your time. I'm sorry that I am late to the game. I know it's true, but it was easy for me to sit back and wait and see, and now I don't like what I see, and before the ship goes down the way, I'd like this thing to be scuttled, honestly. But that's my thoughts, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dorjo. I just want to make let's talk about 10B, 40B. It was created, I don't know, in the 70s, I think, Mr. Freeman, and it was meant to have towns, all towns, especially wealthy towns, bear their share of affordable housing. And it was written, as Mr. Freeman has told us, with great force on the town. It's friendly, I guess, in this town because we're already over 10%. If we weren't on 10%, all we would be doing is we had to come up to block a 40B, as Attorney Freeman has suggested. We have to say there are primary interests in this town that supersede the state and the public declaration that we need affordable housing in this state. And it's not aesthetics. Aesthetics don't rise to the level of outweighing the mandate of 40B. So that's sort of the background of 40B, if I have it very generally, Attorney Freeman. But we're here now at the end of a long process where other town entities, of which we're just one, has done all this work, and we're in a position now of saying, well, we don't like anything you've done, and we're going to overturn it. Now, going to Mr. Nourgeau's point, if money grew on trees, we'd love to build affordable housing for plumbers and working housing, but it doesn't. It comes with strings attached, and the money that's building these projects comes with strings attached. We can't design we can't do, let's just make it all condominiums, affordable condominiums for plumbers and school teachers and firemen and policemen, but there isn't money for that. There's no support for that. If there were, we wouldn't have the problem. We have the problem because it needs public finance, basically. And that's what we're getting here, public finance to meet an affordable housing problem in this town. And we're here, organizing the deck chairs in the Titanic. We don't like it, I don't like it, I think that building is a horrible building. The financing is in place, if we try to change it, they've already spent $700,000, I'm sure, you say you gotta redo it, the financing, I'm guessing, the finance collapses, and we're back to square one. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge expense. To do a full redesign of a project, if that's what you're asking, would be.
Yeah, you've already got $700,000 into it, right?
That's right.
Jerry,
Yeah.
I would urge the Board of Selectmen and or the planning.
Andrew, we're gonna let everybody speak once. When you want to, you can speak once. There are a lot of other people that haven't had the opportunity to speak
I'm
yet.
just speaking to what the chairman is saying.
That doesn't, never mind.
I would just urge the Select Board and/or the Planning Board to see if they can't have these elevations printed in the local newspaper. I really think the voters need to know what we're dealing with. Most folks do not follow the web. I talk to people who lived here all their life. They never look at that. They depend on the press to keep them informed. And I see no harm in asking the Chronicle to have a half page showing the elevations.
Yeah. Well, yeah, okay. You know.
It's up to them. I'm just making a suggestion.
What we're really doing is we're attacking the selectmen here.
Well, I'm not attacking the selectmen at all.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
just
that's
suggesting
exactly what we're doing. It's a direct shot at the selectmen. You haven't done the job well, and we're here to save the town from you.
No,
I don't know that we get authority from the selectmen.
What I'm trying to say is that the public needs to know what it is that we're trying to decide about, and putting it in the newspaper is a great way to get people to know what's going on. We've had one speaker here tonight, didn't know anything about it. I don't, that's not an insult to the selectmen, I just think it's a good process.
Yes, Madam, please.
Cheryl Kadir. I didn't want to speak tonight, and I'm here.
It's okay, a lot of us didn't.
I know, yeah. Thank you for your service, everyone up here, and including the selectmen and the public speak. So I wanted to bring up 3 points. And one is, I wanted to go back to the original application process and having as many past Orleans residents or local people be a part of that local preference. And I asked Elizabeth, because I was sitting in back of her, I think that concretely we could say, hey, if you have a NOSIT diploma, that can be a local preference. Can we add that to the drop-down list along with, you live in the town, you're an employee, you have a child that goes to school here, all right? And that's the kind of person I am. I'm concrete. I try and do that. My second question was about the Navigator tool. I don't know your name, but you brought it up. I don't think I'm going to ask that now, because I'm going to go back to what my neighbor and friend Mark Noggio said. So, absolutely, the town purchased Governor Prince, May 22nd. That's my twin daughter's birthday, May 22nd, 2021. And that's when the town bought it. And Mark, I have to say, I agree with everything you said, other than the fact that there was a little bit of a hard push by one of our selectmen that it should be affordable housing. I went to the Zoom calls when it was going to be possibly half of a theater or a community thing versus housing. There was that conversation. And I just want to point out a couple more concrete things. We had a town manager change. That happened in July 2023. And with that, as a result, a lot of our town roles and leadership changed a bit, and things shook up. Change happened. And as a result, Orleans outreach changed, to your point, David. So we evolve, and yes, $700,000 was spent, and we just got a free plan from Sibel or Sybil? Sibel? Sibel. Mais oui. So she put an overlay, and we got like a 30-second scene of that on top of the original. Gosh, 2 weeks of work with the approval of town officials saying, yes, Sibel, go ahead and do that. All we're saying is, hey, if this is aesthetically a little bit more pleasing and we're flip-flopping things, that's not a big change. And I remember at the last meeting a month ago, a retaining wall in the back of the property is incredibly expensive, and I think Sibel's plan eliminated that wall. I don't know anymore. But I'm just going to go with the concrete because our leadership has changed. We came out of COVID, people woke up. I don't know what to tell you, Mark. But we're here now, and gosh, if something doesn't look good, why are we saying this is final? Because there's no concrete. There's no wood on the plank, gosh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Meow, you want to make a comment?
Thank you. I just wanted to say, there's a suggestion that we're so far down the road, many things have been decided, and we can't go backwards. Now, I want to challenge that a little bit. I am on the Architectural Review Committee, as is Rich Morangel, who's here with me. One of the items that would have cost less money that we're proposing and sent on to the ZBA, the windows are too big. There's no privacy. And as any architect knows, when you have a window that goes to within 12 inches of the ground, that's all tempered glass. So I'm saying a change like that is not going, you go backward, but you gain money and improve it. Now, on the agenda for tonight, it also says waiver of signage, which is in the purview of Architectural Review Committee. That was never presented to the ARC. So again, I'm saying we are moving forward, and we're saying we've done all these things, we've appeared to all these boards. Have we really?
Okay, thank you. No, wait, hold on, the gentleman in the back, please.
Good evening. Bill Weeble, 65 Keziahs Lane, member of the Orleans Historical Commission. I just want to report to the ZBA and to the firms that are here that the Historical Commission has sent a letter forward to the Mass Historical Commission regarding the need for an archaeological survey, which the use of HUD funds may automatically trigger. So we are waiting on a response and some guidance from the commission. Secondly, I think my largest concern, and perhaps the town can answer this, is why has this project not been formally submitted to the Cape Cod Commission, in that it meets the threshold of 30 units. And I know the underground project withdrew their initial project because they knew it would not meet the Cape Cod Commission's standards. And so that I think the town needs to answer, and whether or not the ZBA can request the Cape Cod Commission to do a DRI, Development of Regional Impact review, I don't know. And I guess thirdly, I would ask whether or not going forward, any of these types of projects can be modeled out in order for the different departments to understand the operational impact on their budgets, such as police, fire, safety, DPW, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weeble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could approach the chairman and submit a packet. Sure. I'd like to have you. I'm going to go through it.
All right. The hour is late. And
The hour's late. I'll be brief. I've waited all night also.
Yeah.
The first reminder in the packet is that we're still in a drought. We're still in a drought, and this particular project with 78 units will use as much water as about 150 of the part-time homes that we that currently support the town. And we still even haven't had the underground project online yet. So basically, when you have restrictions, that means you do not have the water to support your existing housing. So adding more would just be a threat to sustainable housing. And there's still nothing in the file from the water department indicating that we do have sufficient water for another 78 units. I think that would be important. But more importantly, and that would be a cause that would override any of the zoning considerations.
So, Mr. Peppin, I can answer your question
Yes.
regarding water. The water department superintendent takes part in the site plan review process, and I'm sure he would have commented on it at that
Okay,
point in
well,
time.
it would be good to have something in the letter, because what I have in the record now indicates we're still in a drought. And with restrictions. I think it's, the second thing I have in the packet for you is we're gonna compare their actual town demographics. Who actually lives here? How many? And how does that compare to our housing? The initial demographics, we have 5,820 people in the town, and it breaks it down by age category. So when we talk at town meeting about helping out younger people, I take that to mean between the ages of 18 and 34. That's the formative years in which you're starting your family, you're starting your business. Of that, the town only has 8% of its residents, or about 500 people, that would qualify in that category. Now, when you compare that to our statistics of how our subsidized housing inventory, we have approximately 376 units to service that age category. So we really have no need for residents of the town of Orleans. It's well covered. Now, so as you know, this as soon as it hits the Housing Navigator, it's a statewide project. So it's really a project not for the town, but it'll be operate as a state project, because everything comes down from the state, everything comes from the Housing Navigator, and it opens it up to all kinds of things. One of the things that's noted in the next package, and I've said this, and I stand by it, that approximately 60% of the people won't even be citizens, never mind residents of Orleans. And here's how we know. So as you open it up, we note that we now have 101,340 immigrants in the state of Massachusetts.
Point of order, this is clearly so irrelevant, I just beseech the chairman.
No, hold on here. So regional, and I back that up, we know that the town of Barnstable,
We're going to have 70% of the people are going to have an attachment. You heard that. You sat here tonight. We had a long explanation of 70% of the.
that's in the initial.
That's the initial thing. That's right. That's all we have any authority over. So.
No, you have authority over the whole project.
I understand.
You're putting your name on this project and it becomes a state project.
All right, your next point, please.
All right. The town of Barnstable, talking about the regional issue, the town of Barnstable has 50,000 residents. Town of Barnstable has 50,000 residents. And if you look at their housing, the state notes that there's 9.9% immigrants now, which is about 5,000 people. And if you look at their statistics, out of the house 5,000 immigrants, they only have 1,579 units. So the state's going to put those people living in Hyannis now right in Orleans on a regional basis. The other next thing we're talking about is the people you're working with. You're working with 3 NGOs, non-governmental organizations, stacked together. And the other, along with the Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Committee for, I forget what it is. Anyway, the state agency. Anyway, the Boston Globe is running a highlights on how corrupt they are. And in fact, here's an article about our auditors having the.
Mr. Pepin.
Mr. Pepin, this doesn't relate to our project.
All right. Yeah, sure it does, because this is who you're dealing with. Now, in terms of the selectmen have referenced, they want to put in a preference for the grammar school. So, okay. Now, it's not and I got criticized for that earlier. But one of the things I put in the packet is the finance. We're spending $40,000 a unit, a person, a pupil for that, which is twice the state average. So if we were to close that school and do like the Outer Cape does with
That
Nauset.
has nothing to do with what we're talking about this evening.
And most of the Cape spends that much per student.
No, they don't. They don't.
Let's, can we, can you, can you settle, can you have a conclusion that you can tell us?
Sure.
Here's,
There's no local need. There's no local need. And when you compare the equities of this project compared to what else you could do with it, they don't add up. If you look at the pros of this, you're going to have 7, 8 units. It's an eyesore, and there's really no way to make it otherwise. And you could do other things with this unit. The principal, I voted to acquire this property. The principal best use of this property is the eastern access to the rail trail. You could put the rail trail in there.
Our only focus tonight is on this project, not
All
what
right.
we could do if we don't do this project. Okay, and I think
But
you've
if you compare it to other things you could do, they have much lower impact.
beyond our authority, sir.
Ask that.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
all right, you're welcome.
Madam, in the back?
Jerry, while Stephanie's coming up, no one on this board believes for a moment that the applicants are corrupt. Nobody. I just want the record to
He's
show.
talking about some state agency, I don't know what he's talking about.
I just want to, we don't feel that the applicants are corrupt in any way whatsoever.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Gaskill from 28 Poshett Road. The town really was very happy to support affordable housing at all of the votes that it took at town meeting. But I don't think that when they voted for it, the vision was that we were going to get something like Building 1 and Building 2. Everyone knows that we need affordable housing, but I really like, I think it was Bob's suggestion, that the cross-sections of the building be shown in an article on the Chronicle so that the town can see what it is the Zoning Board of Appeals is looking at for approval. So that would be my request. Thank you.
Comments from the board?
I ask, there is one, I think, important area that I don't know if we have time tonight to review, the waivers. I believe you were going to go over. Is that too much for tonight?
yes.
A little bit on the agenda.
And Will, you know, the reason we didn't submit an updated, and I apologize, is just some of vacations, et cetera. The subdivision plan will have the final one well before the next hearing. And there's some subdivision regulations that now we will need waivers from. So we will submit, you know, so you can definitely talk about it with us at the next hearing. Thanks.
Jerry, we need to see if anybody's on the web.
Yeah, right, good point. Yeah, and is there anyone in the netherworld, anyone viewing us online who wishes to comment?
Could we ask Davis Walters also if he has any
Yeah,
comments?
we will in a second, yeah, let's see if there's anybody. Peggy, is there anybody there?
There are no hands raised.
No hands raised. Davis, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Thank you for the invitation, but no, not at this time.
All right, thank you. David?
I do want to commend the architect for the changes that he's made to Building 1. I think you've really listened to the things we've said. I want to commend the landscape architect for his design on the way the project looks. The zoning board is just in a very awkward spot, but I didn't want you to go away thinking that we're trying to scuttle this. It's just, we are in a very awkward position, and we're doing our best right now.
Well, thank you. We know you are. Thank you. Appreciate your saying that. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, you know, we hear, everybody has a dream for this project, and if wishes were horses. You know, everybody wants workforce housing, they want home ownership, they don't want rental, they don't want, but the projects, as you hear, that a lot of the people would like to have in this town, I'd like you to address the constraints that financing in terms of size and why you came up with this project of this size, and if any of that was driven by financing, and what kind of flexibility do you have to save this project if there's a major architectural change?
Sure, I can take a stab at that. And Charlie, feel free to chime in. I mean, so I guess, to start, I mean, this was a response to a town-issued RFP that had very specific guidelines about the number of units that they wanted us to target, which was, I believe, in the range of 70 to 80 units in the RFP, with a range of different incomes from very low income, 30% AMI, all the way up through higher income levels. There was a preference for a mix of different housing types, so ownership and rental. And so that was all laid out in the RFP. And so the project was really designed around the stated goals of the town that were expressed in the RFP. And so we worked really hard to try to come up with a project that met as many of those criteria as possible. In doing that, to target the rental housing, especially at the lower AMI, so from 60% AMI and lower, that really drives you, in order to finance that project, it really requires designing a project that's going to be eligible for state and federal tax credits. And that's funded through a very competitive process. We're going to be going up against projects all across the state. There's a huge list of requirements that have to be submitted to the state. The state releases it every year. It's called the Qualified Action Plan that outlines all of the different requirements and how they're going to be scoring all of the projects that get submitted. So they're looking for projects that are cost-effective, that have environmental standards, that have accessibility standards. So we have to design a project with that competition in mind. So to give you an example, we had a project that we're currently under construction in Brewster. It's called Spring Rock Village that Housing Assistance is doing with POA. That project originally was something like 12 different buildings. And it went through the Zoning Board of Appeals in Brewster. We applied for state financing. They kicked it back to us and said, it's too many buildings, it's not cost effective. We needed to go back to the ZBA and go, combine buildings. So we had to go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals, merge buildings, and now it's a 8-building project. So, there's things like that we have to be thinking about when we're designing this, is that we could have proposed a project that had a lot more buildings, but we just know based on our experience, based on all of the goals and things that we're going to have to hit in order to get this project financed at the state, that the projects that are spread out like that in more of the village style development don't hit as many of the requirements that they want to see. So I think earlier in one of the earlier hearings, we mentioned a single building allows us to have elevator access to more units on the site. That's a huge benefit of having one larger building. So there are things like that we're considering on the site that really drive us to the type of development, specifically on the rental project, the Phase 1 project. So that's kind of the high level. I mean, there's a lot, we could probably, talk about a bunch of different design decisions along the way. A lot of it's based on financing. A lot of it was based on feedback that we received very early on from Site Plan Review and the Architectural Review Committee. We went, I think it might have been almost 2 years ago, right after we were awarded the project. We went to those boards with our very early conceptual designs, got feedback, got input on the site layout, the connections to the bike path, fire turning radiuses, all of that kind of stuff that went into the design of the project. So I'd say it's a combination of what was asked of us and what we bid on, and then also the process with various town boards over the last 2 years.
Could I ask a question too? I know that this board, like in all the cases that come before us, when there are letters from neighbors, et cetera, we always recognize it, we read it. I know that in the last hearing, there were some submissions done by, for the architectural elevations.
Yeah.
We never really brought that forward.
Yeah, we did. At the time, we read the letter from the architect. They went through that at the hearing last time. We went through all the items raised by the Architecture Review Commission.
I remember Jerry reading it.
Yeah, and they went through each one of them and I think satisfied all of them.
They said, interestingly enough, they satisfied the criteria that the Architectural Review Committee requested without seeing it.
I know, it wasn't the
And
architectural
we acknowledged that in the
review.
previous hearing.
It was, I think the gentleman just left, Peter. He had submitted, and now also a response.
Yeah, well, it's the
And it
same
was, and that was
categories,
conveyed to the architect.
Yeah, that's the same category as.
Okay, just making sure.
Chairman, may I knock out a couple, answers to a couple of the questions that came up? And
Here, I'm feeling afloat.
public comment. So first of all, and I think, thank you for David, answered this very accurately regarding the adequacy of public facilities and services. This did go through the site plan review process and was reviewed by those departments and was recommended by that board to move forward. You have that letter in the record from site plan review. Yes, we are in a drought. Yes, we have historically low water levels. Yes, we have restrictions on non-essential watering, but we are pumping more than adequate water to be able to serve our daily needs and our anticipated growth in this community. There was an excellent question about Cape Cod Commission review. Under the 40B comprehensive permit process through that statute, the Cape Cod Commission is considered a local board. So they have the ability to comment, much like any of the other local regulatory boards that may have jurisdiction. We did send a copy of the application as well as notice of the public hearing to the Cape Cod Commission. I know they did receive that. We have not received comment from the Cape Cod Commission. This does not qualify as other projects might for discretionary referral. They do have the ability to comment as a local board. That's all. Thank you. And yes, we will. So again, as we spoke last time, we will be working and we'll ask the applicant to go through and itemize some of those waivers as we've talked about at prior hearings and hope to be able to bring that back in sort of a draft decision form. One, to note that again, we talked about some of the new zoning. Those waivers are strictly focused on the base zoning that is in place. They don't consider any overlays or special permit provisions within the code.
If I may, the waiver that I was really interested in doesn't have to do with the zoning, but it had to do with fees, I believe, fee waivers. That will review the next time.
Sure, and no, thank you for pointing that out, and we're open to discussing that. We understand, thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments?
I have a very low priority one that can save to the very end.
All right, why don't we do that? In the back, please, sir.
Just a quick question. Rich Morangel, a member of the Architectural Review Committee. I guess they did come before the Architectural Review a number of years ago. I guess the question I have
I sense that was more recently than that.
We
Those are
received,
recent documents.
Well, I'm not talking about recently, because they've come before us for 2 meetings, but we're talking about kind of this process about who knew what and when. I guess the question was what was a couple of years ago? What
This
was?
is,
no, we have a very recent memo from you.
Yes, but I'm saying, did this group of
We did.
applicants come before architectural review a number of years ago in the early planning stages? I'm not aware of that. I'm just asking the board if they
I believe
did.
Mr. Quinn is nodding his head that they did.
Yeah, we did, and there may have been different members. At the
How long ago was-
I think it would have been very soon after we were awarded the project, so that is probably 2 years ago now, something like
Okay.
that, a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would the ramifications be of, bluntly, one less building? What would that mean in terms of funding or eligibility for funding? Or, what, I guess the current committee is concerned about the size of the.
Mr. Quinn has answered this several
Talking
times
about one less
already.
building.
You might as well again, David.
One bigger building with the same number of units? Is that what
No, I'm wondering if, because the current architecture review committee was concerned about the the density and the scale and the size and the mass. That's why I asked you about the past architectural review committees. What would be
The
the ramp?
RFP stated how many units the town was looking for, between 70 and 80, so I think they split the difference, and that's
Does
why
the-
it is what it is.
Does the board know what the comments were a number of years ago by the architecture review committee in terms
Well,
of
the
the
projects-
appearance of the project with that many units? And if they had concerns
Sure they
about that
would've.
then?
Probably, it's probably on video.
Well,
I'm sure you
I
could
mean-
go into your files
Okay.
and find out.
I'm just asking
No,
here
you're on
tonight,
the
'cause-
committee. You would have better access to
Okay.
it than us.
And so I asked that question tonight.
We don't know.
Do these folks know what the ramifications are of doing a lesser amount of buildings? Is that a detrimental problem?
I think you wouldn't meet the objectives of the town. That-
Would it-
I don't want
would
to
it-
speak for Mark, but
And we were told at an earlier meeting that it would not be financially, it wouldn't work out financially.
That's what I'm asking. Would it make it
Yes,
not
that-
feasible?
that has come out at a couple of previous
All right,
meetings.
so it would affect the financial feasibility of
Yes.
the project. Okay, thank you.
Well, I think we need another meeting.
I think we need a break.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, please, Barton.
could we, at the next meeting, spend time going through the rest of the variances? Because, and sort of, I think we've talked this to death, but maybe get all the way through the variances and find if there's any others that are of pain?
We need to discuss the finding of facts, the facts we need to find, and the votes we need to take. We need to go through those one by one. And I think reflect on where we are through those.
Right, I think that we need to address the waiver requests, and then, after we've done that,
Yeah.
probably have one more, I hate to say it, but we probably have to have one more meeting. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, naturally, we were hoping that we might be able to wrap it up in one more hearing, but I understand that, and we're certainly not going to object.
Well, I think
Liz-
that'll become clear as we go item by item.
Right.
Get them knocked off that night.
Right. The other thing, not to speak for Elizabeth, but in terms of what I think you'll do in a minute, scheduling a next hearing date, if it's possible to do it instead of in 1 month, I don't know when your next regular ZBA hearing date is, but again, I am speaking for Elizabeth, but you can tell me that you decided it doesn't make sense, but if it's possible to do it at your next hearing date instead of a full month out, that would be great.
Well, let me go to the calendar. The next hearing date is a week from today, and
Oh, well, not the next one then.
right, and then the next one is 2 weeks after that. So that's the
Didn't the select board meet?
well, we can do it downstairs.
We could do it downstairs. I think we could fit most of these
Yeah, you
people
can.
in.
We'd be out of here by 7, we have to be.
So we're talking about
The 19th? The 19th?
August 19th. Now, the problem with that, the problem with that is we have other things on for that night.
And also, I happen to have a
Yeah, I have
conflict.
not seen an application come in for the next meeting. There may have been continued
We have a couple, we
applications.
have 2 continued.
Okay, and I was out last week, so something might have
I don't know
come
if they're
through.
both on the 19th or
Well,
not.
the 19th doesn't work for them or for,
Well, what's the board's feeling on a special meeting on the 12th?
I won't be here.
About a special meeting on the 26th?
Works for me.
that works.
What's this out a month? I mean, that works for me, but it
Does it have
puts
to
us
be
back out
Wednesday?
a month.
Does it have to be a Wednesday?
No, that's a good point. That's up to the board.
Tuesday, the 18th?
I think that point, it's a scheduling.
Oh, yeah.
Making sure we have the room.
I don't think anybody else meets at night.
Yeah, not this late. You guys are
I
unique.
mean at 7. Well, is the board amenable to a non-Wednesday night?
That would be
A
fine.
Thursday would work for me. That's my most
Okay.
available
Well,
day.
let's go back. We have, the 5th is out. You can do the 13th or the 20th?
The 13th would be the day that work for me.
All right, the 13th doesn't work. The
No,
20th
13th works for me.
Doesn't work for Mark.
Doesn't,
13th doesn't work for you?
How about the 20th? That's 2 meetings.
I can't do the 20th.
What about a Tuesday?
Tuesday. 18th or 11th?
18th works for me.
18th? It's the night before, two meetings in a row.
18th?
Works for me, Peter?
Yeah, yes, that's, yes, for us, it's fine, for me, it's
Okay.
fine.
All right. Everybody,
I move that we
Hope so.
schedule the next meeting for August 18th.
May I ask one more?
At 7
question?
PM?
yeah, 7 PM.
May I ask one more question to the applicant before we move to
Please
continue?
do.
Related to the waivers, one of the waivers that was still TBD was signage. Is that something that's expected to be completed? And semi-related question, very low importance, is does this project yet have a name? I assume that's what's holding up the
The
sign.
name, the sign, the
Project from hell.
signage, we probably asked for it not being sure as to what the sign is, so rather than guessing tonight, we'll make sure we address that up front and tell you even ahead of time. Because I just don't know, so we'll look at it.
The project does not have a name yet.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, I just figured that was what was holding up the specific sign design is the words.
You're not
on it.
looking for anything crazy.
Anything else to come
I
before
don't
the meeting?
know why you'd need a variance.
No, you
It's
should take a
very
yeah.
specific. If you drive over to West Street, they have a lovely little sign in front. I'm sure it'd suffice. No?
You should take a vote to continue the application to August 18th.
I made the motion, is there a second?
Second
Is there a
that.
second?
All in favor?
All in favor? We're all here. We're all here, so we can do it. All in favor?
7 PM, August
Any
18th.
opposed? All right. Anything else to come before the meeting? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.